Yeah, let me first talk about substance use disorders and what doesn't work. You know, we've spent $1 trillion since Richard Nixon declared the war on drugs, and we haven't changed drug use at all, but we put a lot of people in prison. What we're learning now is that the empathetic response is the correct response. And I'll give you a couple of examples of things that are working in the state that I would recreate throughout the state, and I'll add one more. I spent the afternoon in the Howard Safe Recovery Center, which was a needle exchange. That needle exchange virtually eliminated needles on the street, and it prevents heart valve transplants that amount to about 3.7 million a year. I would add a full-time nurse to that so people can get help right away when they need it. I spent the afternoon down in Rutland at the very creative community action and service center where people can go in for support. That's another model that works. I would also support the expansion of the treatment courts. Treatment courts are an alternative to prison. I spent the afternoon at Washington Treatment Court in Washington County. It works very effectively. I would also support looking at harm reduction sites as safe injection sites and start looking at that as well.
You'd be okay with safe injection sites?
I think we have to. I think this is part of the empathetic response. We know the criminalization response and the harsh response has been totally ineffective.
Mr. Scott.
I want to give credit where credit's due. Governor Shumlin brought this up in his State of the State address and said that we had a problem, and we did. We were just one of the first states to acknowledge that. After becoming elected, I wanted to continue the good work that we've been doing. We formed the Opioid Council. People from all walks of life are part of the council to see what we can do to further to respond to this crisis that we're facing. We forwarded and opened a new treatment center in St. Albans. We had a waiting list in Chittenden County of over 700 when I came into office, people waiting for treatment. With the new treatment facility, we were able to reduce that to practically nothing at this point. I appointed a drug prevention director, Jolinda LeClaire, and she's been doing some great work working with others. Project Vision down in Rutland was what really precipitated all of this. But we're working with Chittenden County and Burlington as well. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we are the model of the nation. The hub and spoke program that we have in Vermont is a model. California's following our lead. New Hampshire is right now. I went and testified in Congress over this issue, and they were all ears and listening as well. I'd love to address the METs as well. But
yeah, would you?
Sure. The METs, we're one of only 2 states that have medical assisted treatment. And this was something that that was passed in the legislature that we moved forward on. But it's been slow in implementation, but I'm proud to say that as of today, we have 650 offenders in the treatment program today. So it was difficult to start, but again, we're one of only 2 states that even offer this. So you can't flip a switch and make it happen, but they're doing some great work there.
And quickly, you didn't answer Ms. Hallquist a bit about safe injection sites. Are you
I'm
okay
not.
with that?
I'm just not in favor of that. I think there are other treatment options at this point, and I'm just not in favor of that at this
Ms. Hallquist, you get the last
point in time.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, we're still talking about a failed system. Having people with substance use and alcohol use disorder in prison is the worst place you can put them. They aren't going to recover in prison. I spent the afternoon at the Northwest Correctional Facility with Greg, the superintendent. He will tell you that's not where people will recover. So we've got to get those people, as long as they haven't committed major crimes, we've got to get them help outside of prison.
90% felons, by the way, are incarcerated at this point in time.
On to the next question now. The October VPR Vermont PBS poll suggested 4 in 10 Vermonters do not think adequate attention is being focused on the problem of racism in the state. Do you, and how will you lead on this issue? Mr. Scott, we start with you.
Yeah, we'd like to think we're insulated from this, but we're not. Just look at the issue with Kaya Morris, who was a representative from Bennington, who chose not to run because of the racial slurs that her family had to endure. And then there was another family camp in Stowe this summer that was subjected to the same slurs. So we're not immune to this. We have to address it. We need more respect and civility. We need more diversity in this state. We we did pass a law encouraging and enhancing some of the civility or some of the racial issues that we face here. And I look forward to continuing to do that, because we need to be more welcoming to everyone, because we need more diversity, we need more people here in the state. And I believe that immigration and accepting more refugees is part of the answer as well.
I will point out that I didn't really hear a plan there. Let me just talk about what I would do. First of all, I'm in this race because I listened to the January 20th, I listened to the Muslim Girls Making Change talk about the harassment they faced in their communities. That's what made me run for office. Now, what I will do is, first of all, I will have people of color on my transition team. I will have people of color on my administration team. I will have a separate, independent commission that reviews all the data from employment, schools, and policing on what groups are targeted for discipline and how they're targeted. I would actually actively work to increase Vermont's diversity. I would use our tourist funds to attract people of color. I would also work hard to increase the diversity of our employment. I think we have to take specific actions, and I would also include ethnic studies in our schools. That would be a required curriculum of all of our schools.
Well, we're doing a lot of that, so we've already started that work with the commission that you talked about.
You vetoed the bill because you wanted this commission to report to you. I think it needs to be independent. Because
and then we passed the bill.
You passed it after
you leave that part out.
After you had the commission report to you.
A constitutional problem.
Yeah, well,
you might run into if you get into it.
I'm just saying it needs to be independent from the government.
I think you should just look at the facts.
Multi-part question here. Ms. Hallquist, let's start with you. You face death threats and personal attacks after getting the nomination. Now, after several months on the campaign trail, what have you learned about how Vermonters view the prospect of a transgender governor? And how should voters who are simply unsure about this make up their minds on Tuesday?
Well, I actually don't think it's a problem for Vermonters. I've talked to thousands of Vermonters. Vermonters will elect me on the issues. I think the biggest issue here, I have many Republicans that are calling me and saying they're voting for me, and they're saying they're voting for me because of the negative tactics that Phil and the Republican Governors Association are using. They're actually running campaign ads, and they're sending out letters that are saying things that are wholly untrue. It's clear the RGA and Phil are threatened, because when they get threatened, they go low. So I've seen incredible division and incredible fear being driven in. And one of the things I will make very clear is, I am not Peter Shumlin. So I say that because there are ads from Phil Scott and the Republican Governors Association that say, beware of Christine, she's a Peter Shumlin. This is fear and division that you and your party are using.
You say you're using the same fear and division right now because you're attaching me to the Republican Party, the National Republican Party. And I think Vermonters know me well enough that I've shown my independence throughout my political life, and I don't think they buy that.
Well, wait a minute. How can I expect you to protect me from the things that Donald Trump is doing if you can't even control your own party?
Well, I don't control the National Republican Party.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not sure that you control the National Democratic Party either, do you?
We've been pretty positive campaign here.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
To answer what Ms. Hallquist said, have you gone low during this campaign?
I have not. I've never run a negative campaign in my entire life. I'm not going to start now. I don't condone it. I don't think you have to do it. And I would challenge anyone to show where I've done anything negative in this campaign. I don't know if you can say the same. I have never said anything negative about you.
I'm just saying you're not taking leadership.
But you've said negative things about me, taken a lot of cheap shots. So I've never done that, and I'm not going to start today.
Well, I just think that leadership means you can lead.
And I've proven that I can lead. Thank you.